My name is SusanChief from Duck Bay. I grew up in Duck Bay off and on, but I was there until I was 6 years old, but after that I was there off and on. And my parents come from Duck Bay. My dad's name is Lawrence and my mom's name is Rose. Growing up, we were there till about 6 years old, I guess. I went to school there, myself and my siblings. I have 10 siblings, so there's 5 boys and 4 girls, but there was 5, but I lost a sister that was older than me. She was the oldest. She passed away when she was, I believe, according to my mom, when she was about 3 years old. She died from an accident. She fell through a window. She was watching my dad cut wood outside, like in Duck Bay, and I guess she fell through the window and cut herself in around the belly button area. No one had vehicles at that time, so it took a long time to get her to the hospital. So she passed away from that accident. I guess she was jumping on a bed watching my dad cut wood. I'm a single parent. I've always been a single parent. I have 4 children, 3 boys, 1 girl. I'm a grandma of 9 beautiful grandchildren. I grew up in Duck Bay, like I said, till about 6, and then after that we were in there off and on, because my dad was a pulp cutter, so we spent a lot of time in the bush camp. Most oftentimes my parents didn't leave us with anyone while they went out to work, so we all had to go with them. I think there was only one time that I remember we were left with my grandmother, but most of the times all the kids had to go with them. So my dad was a pulp cutter in the summer and winter. Also in the summertime, from July, those were the good times, from July the 15th until the end of August, the whole family went picking blueberries. That was my dad's way of providing for his family. He had a big family, so he was a very hard worker. My mom was a very hard worker, and so were we. We all had to work. I was a pulp cutter myself, so I had to peel logs and pile them up, and we had to pick berries too. That was his way of taking care of his family. So it was very nice growing up in Duck Bay. I've always enjoyed being there, and I still do to this day. When I go there, I feel at home, because that's where all my memories are, right? Our last move, I guess, from Duck Bay was to Birch River. Again, my dad had to go pulp cutting, so we lived right in town. In Birch River, we lived in town because we went to school there, and that's when all the separation started. When we were left there, my auntie was taking care of us. My auntie, all from Duck Bay, took care of us while my mom and dad was pulp cutting. My dad didn't work for a little while there. Both my parents didn't work for a little while there, so times were pretty rough. But one day we were taken from there. I think I was about maybe 13, 14 maybe. I'm not really sure of the dates, but I know it was around there. It was, I think, 1969. We were taken into care by Children's Aid. And I still don't understand why, because even though times were tough and we didn't have much of anything, but I was the happiest is when we were with my parents, When I got into care, yes, I had 3, we had our breakfast, we had our lunch, and we had our supper. But I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted to be home. I was in care in Swan River for a little while. My sister and I, we were all separated. Me and my sister stayed at first with a family member, which was my uncle and my auntie, my dad's brother. I think we were there about a year, and then I just remember all that, what happened, why. I understand why now. The lady next door kind of befriended me, I guess, asked me to go and bake cookies with her, and then once I got in there, I don't even know why I went, but I went in and I didn't really understand anything. Everything was new to me. Baked cookies with her, and she was telling me that I should move out of my aunt and uncle's place, and this lady wants girls, and she's a really nice lady, and she was going on and stuff about this, and a lot of nice home, nice lady, you'll be well taken care of. And I was taken care of, my sister and I. And then the next thing you know, because the workers lived next door to this woman, which was Mr. N's. And next thing you know, we were picked up at my aunts and uncles. No explanation whatsoever why. And we were taken to Benito. And that's where I was. I think I was there maybe, I don't know, maybe about a year or two in, and I started leaving because we had to take a school bus to Swan River for me to go to school. And so sometimes I wouldn't even go back. And after school, I would go spend time with my friends. I always knew I was from Duck Bay, but at the time, Duck Bay seemed like it's only an hour and a half away from Swan River, but at the time it felt like 1,000 miles away. Like it seemed really, really far from me, but I thought about it. While in care, I used to look to a distance. I remember I always, growing up, I always looked to a distance while I was in care. To a distance, not just down the street, but I always looked to a distance down the road or down the highway, hoping I could see my mom somewhere coming around the corner or somewhere, because I didn't know where she was. But I never seen her. Never seen her come around the corner or walk down the road or walk down the highway. Never ever seen her, but I always wished for that. I always looked at a distance. I think I might have been, I don't know if I was 18 yet, but anyway, I hitchhiked to DePaul with this woman. She was going to DePaul, so I hitchhiked to DePaul with her, and we kind of separated there somewhere, so I was alone all by myself in DePaul. And then the only thing I thought of was to go to this hotel and go and ask for a job at the kitchen, see if I can go in there and wash dishes. And they took me in right away, and I worked there, washing dishes in a restaurant. And I think I was there not very long, couple months maybe. I don't even remember my first pay, but it was a lot anyway. So I met this a friend there, a girl, and she took me home with her to go and stay with her. And I paid the owners of the house whatever. My first paycheck, I gave her $50 for letting me stay there. I just had some sense to do that. No one ever told me you have to do that, but I guess maybe because my parents have always worked. Like I remember my dad saying there's no such thing as welfare. You know, like over the years, like once we were in Winnipeg together as adults, and when I had kids, I remember he used to say, long time ago there was no such thing as welfare. You had to work. So I think that I don't know, that's kind of the way I lived my life. I've always worked. And then all of a sudden, I somehow met my dad there, because I used to hear that he was in Genpeg, like way up north. He worked there in a bush camp still. And then I learned that time that my mom and dad were separated. Like they went their separate ways. I guess once they lost us, they lost each other too. And then my mom moved to Duck Bay. I didn't know until way later though, but she moved back to Duck Bay, and my dad was up north working. And as soon as he found out that I was in DePaul, he come looking for me, and he found me at that hotel, and he gave me a bus ticket and told me to get out of there right away, take a bus and go to Winnipeg and go live with my grandma. And that's what I did, hopped on a bus. Went to Winnipeg. I was already 18 then. Lived at my grandma. I don't even know how that happened, but my uncle met me at the bus depot and took me to grandma's, and that's where I stayed. And there too, I got a job like shortly after, and worked in a sleeping bag, filling sleeping bags, making sleeping bags. So that was fun. And that paycheck was, I think, about $180, $200 or something like that. And there too, I paid my grandma $50 for living there. So I never, throughout all these years, I've always paid my way. I've always held a job all the time. And then I had my first child when I was 21, and my only daughter. And I've got 3 boys. So it was a struggle raising them, but I've always worked. I've always had a job to try and take care of them the best way I can. Even though struggles or not, I still try to take care of them the best as I can. I've always lived in Winnipeg. I eventually went back to school, upgraded my education, my skills. I've always been interested in working either as a social worker or working with families and children. I've always had that in the back of my mind. I could have been a nurse at one time, but I wasn't interested. I mean, took a little bit of training at Swan River Hospital there, but I eventually dropped that, like, not long. I wasn't there very long. Just left my 2 nurses' dresses I had there in a little thing. I had just left it there and I left. Didn't matter. It's not really what I wanted to do. Yeah, so I moved to Winnipeg, and that's where I've been all this time until now, and I'm retired now. Later on, after this, so many years of working for places I didn't want to be, factories or whatever, I decided to upgrade my skills, and I took a little bit of training, and I started my employment with Marymount, because I figured, I don't know, it's just where I found out about this place, that there was kids in there and they were locked up in there, you know. They stayed there a long time, long periods of time, so I figured that's where I was going. I think it's just because of where I was at growing up, being, you know, growing up in the system. That's where I went, so I was there for maybe about 6-7 years, working right at Marymount facility there. And then from there, I worked in group homes for many years, and eventually I figured I'm gonna slow down a little bit. So I worked with mostly teens. I worked in a treatment group home, and with NWMC, it was Aboriginal group home. It was a treatment group home, working with girls only from 12 to 18. I was there too for a while. Eventually I figured I'm gonna slow down a little bit and work with the younger ones, babies, little ones, 0 to 12. And that's what I did until I retired 2 years ago. I never ever forgot my language. I don't know why, because my siblings, most of them I think there's only 3 of us that can speak our language, so the language, even though we're pretty close in age, but they lost the language somewhere. And that, maybe because the foster home, I know our foster home wasn't, for me anyway, wasn't that good. I used to listen and observe a lot. I didn't say much, I was really quiet, but I remember being very, very observant, and I would listen. And I think sometimes the woman that I lived with didn't like it, because, you know, she often called me stupid. And I used to wonder why. You're stupid. You're stupid. Always. Yeah, but I kept my language, which is Soto. I've always, even though a majority of the time I hung around with English, like we spoke English all the time. But for some reason, my language always stuck to me, which is Soto. And I could still speak it now. And I'm proud of my kids today, my 3 boys, my girl. You know, they're doing pretty well. A lot better than, you know, I did sometimes. It still affects me, I think, I don't know. Whatever. With the way I grew up after being separated. It's 2 of my brothers are still in the States, and the 2 sisters came back because they were adopted out. And during the 60s scoop, there's 2 girls, 2 boys that were adopted out to the States. I think I remember exactly when that happened. It was about when we were moved out of my uncle's home, because I used to be able to visit my siblings when they were just little, 2-3 years old. And one day I was told I couldn't visit them anymore. And when I asked why, they said because they cry every time you leave. And never seen them again until later. Over the years, I learned that they were in the States somewhere. So I see the 2 sisters, and one is in St. Malo, not far from Winnipeg, and one is in Winnipeg. And the 2 brothers are still in the States. One is in Florida and one is in Minneapolis. But I don't have no contact with the boys that are in the States. And I have very, very little contact with the 2 sisters. It's really, really hard to connect as my brothers and sisters, because I think that bond was broken to pieces, shredded. It's really difficult. You have to go through with it in order to understand. My sisters and my brothers are just like you and I. That's the kind of relationship it is. That's kind of the relationship it is. It's just different. It's really, really, really tough.